He is eternity, lured from hour to hour. He is infinity in a little space. He is immortality in the arms of death.
As I am 80 and I am spending 6 months in Auroville, suddenly I thought that I could die in Auroville. And so in the morning, I decided to do a little testament. What I wanted if I die in Auroville, I gave the telephone numbers of my children and what I don't want and so and so. And I did it in French. I asked Kripa, who was in France, to translate this little testament in English. And so Kripa said, well, you are doing film. Why don't you do a film about that? That would be very interesting. So at the moment I was not ready, but I began to think about it. And when I came back 3 months after, I said, well, that's a nice idea. And it could be also a process for me to face death and know more about what mother wrote about death. She wrote a lot of things and sad poem and so. And so this idea of film just began. So that's why I was very happy to interview you about the subject. And I would like to know for you, what is the meaning of death? What is the meaning of death?
The material or physical causes of death are not its soul or its true cause. Its true inmost reason is the spiritual necessity for the evolution of a new being.
For me, the death is part of the life. It's something absolutely natural. We born, we live, and we die. That's all.
You know, actually, in our normal Aurovillian lingua, we don't use the word death. When we refer to the mother or to Sri Aurobindo or to others, we say they're passed on or so on.
For me, it's nothing to worry about. We all have to go through it. It's just a passing from this state to another state, hopefully to a better state.
The meaning of death for me, it's just a new adventure. It's the next stage.
Death is a shift into something what we think we don't know. And if we could shift consciously during death, what we call death, then it's not death. Then it is just the shift into the timeless and the shift out of the physical body. The rest is still there.
We are speaking for me only of the death of the physical body, because there is no other death. The real us within us doesn't die, so.
I don't attach a lot of meaning to death. To me, death is the final. It is a process of arranging, putting my affairs in order, as you did with your testament, so that your wishes are going to be respected. And I have had conversations with people about death and about the afterlife. And for me, death, where I die, how I die, is not any significance. To me, this is just a temple. It's a shell.
And to see that actually death is simultaneously happening with life. It's a process of life itself. It's like my cells are getting regenerated all the time, and many cells are dying all the time, and new habits are being formed and old habits are dying. Activities are emerging, so old activities are going away. There is this constant emergence and dissolution, emergence and dissolution, emergence and dissolution.
We die multiple times in our life, actually, you know, because what actually dies, it's our identity or who we think we are. So I think that if you go through certain traumatic experiences where something intense happens to you, it's a certain kind of death. It's where you leave a certain part of who you are behind and you reinvent yourself as something new.
Everyone has their own way to live and to die.
Yeah.
Before the death comes to me, I need to learn how to live so I can die with ease, maybe.
Death at work.
What is this thing called death? Can God die? O thou who fearest death, it is life that has come to thee, sporting with a death head and wearing a mask of terror.
When you initially become a doctor, the first few patients you lose haunt you. It's very hard to cut yourself off from somebody who's suffered and gone, particularly with the younger age groups, with children. Very, very hard. And you learn to cut yourself off from the sorrow, the recurrent remembrances. You learn to put a window. Otherwise, it breaks you. And then over the years, you develop a veneer. All doctors develop a veneer. You have to. And here, the care that is lavished subsequent to death reminds you that it's just a passage. It's not a permanent loss. It's a passage.
In anthropology or cultural anthropology, which is my background, we look at death, and especially actually, so not the biological death, but everything that happens after it. As a cultural practice, and we sort of try to understand how in different cultures, different ways of dealing with death, how they impact our own process as individuals, how they impact the communal process of dealing with death. Because it is like a biological given, so every culture has a way of dealing with death, and I think the most prevalent one is definitely ideas of immortality, afterlife, and then the rites that will help the deceased to come into that afterlife in the proper way.
Death in Auroville.
A new form must be created, a new harmony and parity made possible. This is the true significance of death, and this is its use in nature. But if the form can be more quick and pliant, and the cells of the body can be awakened to change with the change in consciousness, there would be no need of a drastic dissolution. Death would be no longer inevitable.
I just follow what Mother and Sri Aurobindo have said about it. It's the means of evolution. The soul stays with the body until the body is no longer capable of changing to accommodate the growth and the development of that's called for. And at that point, the soul leaves it, and that's when death takes place.
I remember the first person that died in Auroville. it was all quite a shock for all of us because somehow we never thought anybody would die. So we were in a village where nobody had died, so death didn't really exist. And then death starts existing, and then you're like, okay, how do we deal with this? So in the context of Auroville, I think we understand that it's a passage. I think we understand, like people do in India, that our life is ongoing. Even if we don't have our body, it goes on. So it's a little bit less frightening because it's a sort of night to the day of life.
If you judge your own life and you go, my life has to have meaning, I need to have accomplished something, then you always feel that you haven't accomplished enough. So death becomes something scary because maybe you don't manage to complete what you're doing.
When life is lived richly and fully, death, that closure, becomes something very beautiful, a beautiful offering.
I think it's the first reason that Mother explained why you don't have to be afraid by death. It's because you don't know when, you don't know how, so you just have to be open and just live what you have to live. But don't be frightened because you don't know.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Life, death, life. The words have led for ages. Our thought and consciousness, and firmly seen. Two opposite, but now long hidden pages are open, liberating truths undreamed. Life only is, or death is life disguised. Life or short death, till by life we are surprised.
Do you think in Auroville there is a different view about death?
I don't think there's an Auroville view of anything, actually, for better or worse. There's a standard Auroville line on certain subjects, but if you talk to individuals about almost anything, you get different opinions, and something like that is going to be totally individual. Yeah, I suppose that Aurovilians who have had, who are familiar with Mother and Sri Aurobindo, either through their writings or through any other way, have a different view of death than people who have a more distant contact with them or no contact with them.
Sri Arvinda Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arvinda.
First of all, when I was a child growing up in Auroville, we really assumed, for example, that Mother would never leave her body. And I remember having this experience of, oh, so now Mother can be everywhere. That was what I thought as a child.
After I saw Mother's supposedly dead body on 18th November 1973, what I saw of her body was a glory, a kind of orange mist that had risen above the bed and was full of such an intense, incredible power and consciousness.
When the mother died, and when I said the word died, I had something give me a slap. Boom! And then I said, oh, I'm sorry, I know, I'm sorry. I knew there was another formation coming in which would not apply to what happened to Sri Aurobindo and the mother. So when we talk about death, then it is with this double take. In the normal language we use word death, but in our case we often feel Mother has a whole compilation on death, what she says in the agenda and her letters and so on. It is just letting go of one body and the soul finds another instrument. No, it is a much, and she says if people would only know what a little step it is nothing to go from here to there. It is just a little thing.
And we have this whole epic poem of Savitri by Sri Aurobindo where conquest of death. That's the underlying theme there. There is conquest of death by the power of love. Not love in the conventional human limited experience, but something vaster.
Elle nous convie à être en connexion avec les fleurs qui vivent tout simplement très paisiblement. Et elle nous dit, enfin je déforme un peu, que si on savait tout ce qui est inutile dans notre vie et pourquoi on s'inquiète de tant de choses, eh bien on n'aurait plus envie de rester sur cette terre. On voudrait tous partir. Mais elle rajoute, mais le divin dans sa sagesse fait qu'on ne connaît pas l'issue de la mort. Donc on reste.
Personal experiences.
I have the experience quite convincingly that consciousness is not, consciousness is separate from the physical, and there's no reason to imagine that when the physical leaves, the consciousness does anything except continue where it has to go. So no, it's not a frightening prospect for me at all.
When I was about 15, I had a dream of Mother, and she was walking with Satprem, and they were talking, and I was like, Mother, you're not dead. And she looked at me and she said, Tu sais très bien, in French, she said, Tu sais très bien que je ne meurs jamais. Je dis, oui, c'est vrai, pardon, excuse-moi.
Death is but the changing of our robes to wait in wedding garments at the Eternal's gate.
I realized that actually the body of Mother was the first so-called dead body I had ever seen. So my first impression of death, regarding even the body, and the new kind of death that can now happen thanks to the evolutive action done by both Sri Aurobindo and Mother, was that glorious body and the effect it had on my own being, including my body, I found out later.
When I lost my first child, that was in 1967, the mother explained later on that when the soul comes into the terrestrial atmosphere and when the soul wants to leave, there are two passages which used to be very difficult. In previous centuries, the birth of a child was always connected with labor pain, with crying, with suffering. And often it was considered, maybe when you grew up and your grandparents, a child only become conscious at a certain age. Before it is just a baby. And she said at that time in '67, children born now are born conscious. So that passage has been opened more, the arrival here. But the departure of the body is still connected with a certain amount of agony and a certain amount of pain and a certain amount of suffering. And she says she is working on it. So how to get in harmony, how to not cling too hard, how to allow the soul to leave when the time has come, this is our work. No?
When somebody dies, we are not sorry for them. We are sorry for us. Because the people who die, is die. You don't have any problem. We have a problem. But that is totally egoist, nothing else.
I know your son died. At what age?
He was 7. When he was 7, he ended strangely again leaving the body. Because that particular morning he came to me, that particular morning around 7 o'clock. You know, he was asking me why they don't allow me to go to Mathur Mandir to meditate. Then I asked him, do you know what is meditation? He said yes. And he said, folded leg and sat and closed his eyes. Then I laughed at him. I will not know what is going to happen. Then at 10 o'clock in my office, I come to hear my son now drowned right there in the Oro Dam. See, he was so perfect, and the soul wanted, of course, as an emotion, I had a lot of attraction. One may cry, this, that, but he left that day. Definitely, the soul wanted to live that day like that model.
And you accepted?
But in the beginning, I was suffering. Till today, I'm suffering. That's a different. That is a different case, a different issue. But I have accepted in one way.
East versus West.
Shall I accept death? Or shall I turn and wrestle with him and conquer? That shall be as God in me chooses. For whether I live or die, I am always.
You see, in France, for instance, it became very technological. You go from hospital and then you go to a cremation thing and press a button. And so when you come here, especially in India also, and in Auroville, it looks much better.
I don't think that it's better or worse, it's very different, and I think it has a lot to do with that in the West we are focusing more and more on the physical death, the biological death, and less on sort of the meaning that, or the symbols or the life that comes after death. And I think here in Auroville that is still a little bit more alive, no? That we think of death as a stage of transition, and that therefore also everything that surrounds it, so the way you take care of people while they're dying, the way you take care of their body, the way you bury them or cremate them, etc., that it has a significance, that it actually has an impact, a real impact on, in this case, the physical community, but also on the soul or the spirit of that person. Anyway, in the West, because we have the technological possibility somehow, that we can take more of a distance from death. We can give the care of the dying people to people outside of our direct sphere, and the cremation and all these things are handled by professionals. So it becomes a little bit more distant from us, which you could wonder if that has something to do with the growing fear of death, because maybe the belief in the afterlife is diminishing.
I think that Auroville is greatly influenced by India, and this idea of reincarnation, or of that it's just one chapter, is also something that we feel strongly in India.
The big difference between India and Europe is, in India, everything is there, and you face whatever it is. In Europe, no. Because as all the rest of also the life, the ceremony in Europe is until at one point. After, it goes separate, alone. You are not there with the dead. You are not there in front of the dead, no? You are, everything it's like there is a screen, it's cut. Here, no. Here you are there until at the end of the story.
So the approach is completely different. Not only in the villages, all over India. In a way, you celebrate the passing of somebody who's older and has lived a full life. Here it becomes a bit more of a show. You have crackers, and you have these large flower-laden fires and lots of noise. And in Auroville, it's quieter, more internalized, much more, much deeper.
Farewell in Auroville.
Death is the question nature puts continually to light, and her reminder to it that it has not yet found itself. If there were no siege of death, the Creator would be bound forever in the form of an imperfect living. Pursued by death, he awakes to the idea of perfect life and seeks out its means and its possibilities.
Est-ce que tu as l'impression que le fait de vivre à Auroville donne une autre approche de la mort?
Oui. D'abord, il y a un détail pratique. On est une communauté. Et souvent, on connaît la personne qui est décédée, enfin qui a quitté son corps. Hein. Et puis, j'apprécie beaucoup le travail du farewell, qui met une atmosphère paisible. Le défunt a quelque chose de... Je veux dire, il est mis dans une situation la meilleure pour lui. Après, ce qui se dégage, c'est autre chose. Hein. Les fleurs qui l'entourent, ça, je dois dire que j'apprécie.
Oui.
Oui.
Conventionally, when you come from the normal society, death was associated with a lot of pain and sorrow, loss. Here it was kind of fullness, a completion, an offering. Beautiful.
when I go to the farewell ground in adventure, and I go because I love the people who left their body here. It's a sign of respect. And when these people left, there is a kind of silence and a peace. But as a collective, we are still in the middle of some strange Christian hang-up, mourning, crying, so sad. I always feel very uneasy.
In Northern Europe, at least, in societies that are a bit more individualistic, and maybe a few of them also have a Protestant background, that mourning also becomes quite internalized. There's not so much outward expression as you see in other cultures. And there's a really interesting anthropological question there about do you suffer in a different way, basically? And also somehow there's a question like, what is more healthy, or what helps you process? And the thing is, we just don't know.
When they're in too much of a hurry to burn them, sometimes they burn them alive. They should wait. There's a consciousness in the form assumed in the cells. That takes 7 days to come out.
Alors ça, une chose qui est aussi importante et pratique pour nous, c'est que dans ce passage de la mort à la vie, c'est les expériences des gens qui sont brûlés tout de suite après leur mort, les crémations. Il y a une très grande souffrance, et là-dessus, elle le répète, et elle est très affirmative, qu'il y a la conscience de la forme du corps, qui dure en moyenne 7 jours. Et là, je crois qu'Auroville, on en est conscient, à moins que la famille demande de les brûler tout de suite. On ne se précipite pas quand même à brûler les gens ou à les enterrer. Et ça, je crois qu'il faut que... Enfin, au Farwell, ils en sont conscients.
And I think that's why also in Auroville, we keep the body for a few days so that the being has a clear understanding that this is over and it can move on.
Respecting that in Auroville we say no religion, So, and then as a Aurovillian living here and with respecting the charter and Mother and Sri Aurobindo's philosophy, we are also, we don't carry all these things here.
For Yogi, the people who went, or we all believe that he's they have to be, yes. But the other, what we call it, Agala Maranam. Agala Maranam is death happened like that, unconsciously, accident, or, and you were suffering with kind of cancer or that for 6 months. No use to keep him another 7 days. There is nothing, because he already dead by his disease, by that. He's dead. And he kept the body to prolong because the soul did not leave it. That time. So we don't have to apply Mother and Sri Aurobindo theory for all sort of people. This is typical, this education we teach. You take somebody said, there, see the line, oh mother, no, not all that. I will not agree. Maximum 2 days if you like, then 3 days at the most, because body decays, smells. What's the point of putting it in the ice and preserving it, and then the body is becoming like a fish kept in the ice, no use. And it takes time to burn it. When it is fresh, it burns better. You don't need to put 10 kilos of ghee on it. Maybe 2 kilos is enough.
must never wish for death. One must never will to die. One must never be afraid to die. And one must will to exceed.
I mean, the Western model of death and dying is pretty frightening and horrible as far as I'm concerned. That's what I'd be afraid of when I think about dying if I wasn't here. That, I'd be in the hands of the doctors or the hospital and not have much to say about it. Whereas here, if I am sick, I'm going to stay at home and die, in the bosom of my family and without a lot of tubes. Much more my style, I think. We'll see. It's easy to talk about, no?
Technology and illness.
The one main question for me, it's about technology and science and medicine, and where does this come to play with death? Seeing my friend who passed away with cancer, she had 6 years after being diagnosed of life, and she had many, many operations and treatments in that time. Towards the end, I saw her relying a lot on medicine to make her comfortable. And it was always one medicine after another, and at one stage she had like 6 tubes coming in and out of her. I question how I would be if I was in that situation. Part of me really just wants to be with nature and whatever naturally happens to me to surrender to that. But then we live in a society and an age now where technology and medicine is part of us. And at what stage do we try and have a longer life because medicine can save us and technology can save us, or at what stage do we surrender to what is our destiny? What is our destiny?
So it's a personal choice. Finally, it comes down to the person. If you were to ask me as an allopathic doctor, then we sign a bond when you become a doctor to nurture life despite any odds. So it's our duty to carry on with all those bloody machines. I'm sorry. Those machines are a headache. We are dead against them. But it's our duty. So if you come to a hospital area, the doctor is liable to medical negligence if you don't try and revive. It's your duty. Unless the patient has given a DNR, do not resuscitate. It's there in every country, including in India. But when that person is beyond a certain level of awareness and is not able to insist that I do not want this, then it's up to the relatives to decide. And very often the relatives say no, carry on. Despite the fact that there is no further, you can't go any further. Nothing will help. Nothing is going to help. The patients insist, the families insist, carry on trying. You spend so much money and energy, and it's so unfair for the patient to be hooked up to all these beeping machines and pipes and tubes. It's a horrible way to go, but it's okay. So there have been many patients in Auroville in the recent past who have suffered and gone with cancer, etc., who came back home from the hospital and chose to go at home despite whatever discomfort. There were others who chose to go into a hospital at the last minute and go in the ICU. I mean, that's a horrible way to go. You're at home, you may have some music on, one of Sunil Das' beautiful pieces. You might have family members around you. Nobody can be in the ICU. You're alone, hooked up to all these horrible, noisy machines. What a way to go. No. So if I had a choice, no. You go home, you're going to go. You reach a final frontier. It's fine. It's just a frontier. You're crossing it. But if something can be done, and if you've chosen to check that there is a treatment available and you find that it's an early stage, then I think we are honor bound to treat this machine nicely. So do what you can initially. Do what you can, what is easily done. Then when it goes beyond a certain point, leave it. Go with grace.
We don't die because of our DNA. We die because of our consciousness, in my opinion. We don't die because we get a disease. We die from that disease because I know this is difficult, but because we attract the disease. At some level, we let that in. Do I expect something from outside to come and change who I am and change my relationship with dying? Or do I expect to do it from within? I'm interested in the inner journey. That's why I think we are here in Auroville.
The spiritual path.
Death comes in many forms. There is thousands of forms. Disease. Now it is the latest coronas, this China thing. Then one have to do a little bit of why, how, what makes. Then I would connect all the thing with the karmic theory, karma theory. Individual karma is there, our village karma is there, a nation karma is there, and the world karma is there. How we deal with it. It's a karmic thing. If you can, that's why I say everything has a root of a problem.
To get out of all these experiences, finally, more and more, each one has to take up his part of becoming more conscious, and out of that we come, after a longer period, into some truer possibilities, and finally in the truth consciousness which will organize the earth life. That is what Sri Aurobindo and Mother also are telling us, and I think when we look exactly at our own experiences, then we can see that is necessary.
We can die any time, and I was thinking about a couple of situations that I experienced here in Auroville about the process of 3 individuals actually that were given basically a death sentence, because we're all going to die. That's a given. And when I say a death sentence, they were told that you have so much time to live. And it's what we do with that that's more important to me than death itself. I would hope that if I was given a death sentence, that I would do it in a curious way of reflection of how my life has been. I have personally, I can say right now, I don't have any regrets of my life. I would have done certain things differently, but I don't have regrets.
What would you like to know about death?
Oh, death. Our masked friend and maker of opportunities. When thou wouldst open the gate, hesitate not to tell us beforehand. For we are not of those who are shaken by its iron jarring.
Is there anything that you would like to know about death?
I'd like to know about life first. I have a lot of questions there still.
What would change in my life if I knew what death was? What would happen after death? No? You know, if I knew that there was a heaven or a hell, would I live differently? If I knew that, if I knew what happened once I died, would it affect my life? I don't know. I don't think so.
No, I think I like it as it is. I think I like the unknown. Because I think if I knew all, I would take this life for granted. More so, knowing that there's more chances or more stories and more lives. I think this is as it's meant to be, and just by having faith in and surrendering to that makes this more of a quality of life.
I have a very nice astrologer in Paris, and she said, well, for a long time, she said, tell me, you won't never be frightened because you are so curious to know what's after. And that's right. Really, I'm very, very curious to know what is after, because I'm sure there is something, but exactly what, I don't know, you see. So I don't think I am frightened. I realized during these interviews, different interviews, that I was much more frightened to get old and to be dependent and to be on a wheelchair and dependent on the other, not to be myself, not to be able to be passionate, enthusiastic. This, I realized during this interview that I never thought about that.
A new death. The quarrels of religious sects are like the disputing of pots, which shall be alone allowed to hold the immortalizing nectar. Let them dispute, but the thing for us is to get at the nectar in whatever pot and attain immortality. You say that the flavor of the pot alters the liquor? That is taste. But what can deprive it of its immortalizing faculty?
I find it's one of the most beautiful bridge that we can create as a neighbor. You know, and it's like there's a huge value there that we both, that they have lost a brother, we have lost a brother or sister. But this, if we can bring it together and bring it in one platform, this is one of the most beautiful bridge we could ever have with the villagers. You know, and like, it's okay. It will take time for all of us to change from how we are brought up and for all these systems that has been planted. But we have a different concept of living in Auroville, is to create human unity. So human unity can be also applied here. First, bridge with your neighbors.
You know, there's so many different types of, there's, I think, 56 nationalities of Aurovilians who live in Auroville. And obviously with that comes different cultures, different practices, and different views. So I think what I'm hearing through some of the interviews we've had and what we've seen is how to make a space where all of these can be held. You know, do we need to just hold all of these, or do we need to co-create something new with all of these inside? So maybe this is where Auroville comes in for this, the city of dawn, the city the earth needs. Maybe we have to co-create a space where everyone can live in human unity and die in human unity.
We are all different. We all came here in different ways. We all live this yoga to different levels of understanding and of experience, and it's perfect like that. We are a whole, where everybody is needed the way they are, and voilà.
Why now here is a process of widening your consciousness, of becoming more aware of your dharma, the swadharma of your being here.
One should learn to live life with the soul. That is yoga. That is yoga and was yoga. And finally, Sri Aurobindo said, we know that finally all life is yoga.
Because if we think that life is measured by death, then that death becomes the ultimate important moment. It's like it's where you get the results. Like if the results matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is the life, what we've lived up to then.
So for me, the challenge is within one's lifetime to try and develop enough awareness so that at that moment you're ready. And I realize it takes a whole lifetime to do that.
On a tendance à s'identifier à ce qui peut périr, à notre corps physique. Alors qu'il faudrait s'identifier à ce qui ne périt pas, à l'esprit. Et là, il n'y a plus de mort.
It took millennia to evolve from animal to man. Today man, thanks to his mind, can accelerate things and will a transformation towards a man who will be God. This transformation, with the help of the mind, through self-analysis, it's a first stage. Afterwards, vital impulses must be transformed, which is far more difficult. Then, most of all, the physical. Each cell of our body will have to become conscious. It is the work I'm doing here. It will allow the conquest of death. It's another story. That will be the future mankind, perhaps in centuries, perhaps sooner. It will depend on men, on peoples. Auroville is the first step towards this goal.